Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines where my guest is Jason Hunt. He is with IT Solutions, Information Technologies. You know, the big issues in today's society is internet security and privacy. Jason's going to tell us there's basically 5 ways to improve security and protect your privacy, but it's not foolproof. So join us on the next Legal Lines with Jason Hunt.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I have a Legal Lines tip for you. Remember, knowledge is power. And I want you to know if you're injured, Louisiana law grants you a variety of claims to make sure you're fully compensated. It's generally chopped up into several categories, the first being general damages. That's going to compensate you for your mental and physical pain and suffering, your scarring, disability, functional limitations, your loss of enjoyment of life. Also, it will compensate your family, frankly, for your loss of affection. It's called loss of consortium claim. Next category is specific damages. Those would be, say, for example, past and future lost wages, past and future medical expenses. You also have a claim sometimes for what's called punishment damages or punitive damages, typically only available when you're injured by a drunk party. Finally, you're entitled to legal interest from the date you file your lawsuit until you're paid and court costs. So my Legal Lines tip to you from me, Locke Meredith, make sure you know what your claims are.
This has been Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm very pleased to have on the show for the very first time Jason Hunt. He is an information technology expert. He's with IT Solutions. Jason, thank you so much for doing the show with us.
No problem.
Let's talk about a kind of a pinnacle issue in our society right now, and that is really, it's kind of like two sides of a coin. One is security of the web world, the internet world, and privacy. I'm reading articles these days that are talking about the federal government being hacked, from the White House, the IRS, to our military. So we've got the biggest, most powerful, most wealthy component of our society being hacked. And then we have down to private companies and Target, and I've forgotten, you read about it, it seems like every 2 weeks, about how they've stolen millions of tax ID numbers or millions of Social Security numbers, identity theft, all that stuff. So it's a big issue. So tell people, how secure is the internet?
It is what it is. The internet is secure in certain aspects, not secure in other aspects. The way the web pages are designed, you have your security certificates that for each page. When you go to a site that does not have a security certificate, I'd stay away from it.
Okay, so educate me on that. I was completely unaware. I mean, this is not an area of which I have any particular great knowledge. So a website is required by law to indicate whether or not they have a security certification?
Whenever you're doing any kind of private transaction or information transaction with Social Security, name,
personal information, license,
that's correct.
Credit card numbers, that kind of stuff.
Correct.
So anything that might be useful to a criminal to still use that information against you, the company that's requesting that information will have a certificate. How do you find out whether or not they have that certificate?
Usually it's located at the bottom, or when you look at the browser on top of your web page, it will usually turn to HTTPS for secure.
Okay. And sometimes I recall seeing a little lock. That
is correct.
Is that like a
different
little icon?
Different browsers have different icons
Okay.
that shows that it's locked.
And so is there like the gold star type of certificate from a certain entity or group or government agency that tells you, yep, these are straight up people, or is it you just got to trust that the certificate's what it says it is?
There's so many out there. I mean, you can get a certificate from any type of provider, but usually whenever they're locked and secured, you kind of have to go with it.
Wow. So even though they may have, so bottom line is look for a certificate. If they don't have one, don't give the information.
That's correct.
That's
Stay away
the
from
number
it.
one instruction. If they do have the certificate, recognize that even though they do, that doesn't guarantee that the information is completely protected.
That's correct.
Interesting. All right. So bottom line is buyer beware.
Correct.
All right. So what can an individual? Well, let's talk about the other side of this coin, which is privacy. There's a lot of stories that you're reading, particularly for now several years. We've read about the NSA, which is a very secretive branch of our federal government that's there to help protect us. There's allegations via Snowden and others that they are basically spying or seizing information that's private information or information on our computers and storing it and using it potentially in the future. So how do people protect themselves against that?
Well, that's a good question. You hear all the time that people are, capturing demographic information about what you're browsing, purchasing, listening to, watching, that type of stuff.
Right.
I don't really know how to tell you that. I don't know how you would protect yourself from that.
So you cannot, and that leads me to an interesting kind of discussion, and that is, the bottom line is when there are companies like Facebook or Google, I'm sure the other computer management system, which would be Apple, and there's companies that have whole businesses where they're literally collecting every website you click, every page you click. The iPhones have settings where they literally, if you have it on the maps, they're following you around. They know where you spend the majority of your day, how many times you stop there, how many times that year you stop there, all that stuff. They have addresses, the whole bit.
Correct.
And so the only way you, I presume, can eliminate that invasion of your privacy is to turn off the settings that allow, for example, the iPhone folks, Apple,
Correct.
to monitor that information. And it's quite a web that you got to go through to be able to do that. But folks like Facebook, they don't let you, as I understand it, totally shut down the ability for them to track you.
The only true way to do that is to completely unplug from the internet, get off the grid.
So folks have to recognize, if you're on the web, the bottom line is when you're going to a website, more likely than not, or you're using a particular program, particularly the iPhones or the Googles and those guys, they're going to track their information, period.
That's correct.
And confirm for me that there are literally businesses, huge multi-million-dollar businesses, that buy that information or they accumulate that information, or Google and Apple, they sell that information to folks, I guess because the folks think they can target an audience and sell their product or service.
That's correct.
Interesting. All right, so no way to really solve that privacy dilemma other than turn it off.
Correct.
All right. Let's talk about the security concerns as it relates to whether it's the government or private businesses or us as individuals. Everybody reads about identity theft, and you hear about something LOCKE, I forgot what it's called.
LifeLock.
LifeLock. What can folks do to protect themselves? I recognize that it's probably impossible to fully protect yourselves, but what can folks do? I've read about encryption. Tell folks what that is.
Encryption is kind of based off of, like you can encrypt all your computer information and all the stuff that you do on your computer so that no one can steal your computer and get your information and stuff like that on a local level. As far as encrypting on a internet level, you kind of leave that up to the security stuff, that the certificates and that kind of thing, that the bit encryption that they have on their web pages when transferring that information from your computer to the internet.
So the certificate folks who say we're protecting this very private information, really what they're saying is we're encrypting it so that the typical folks can't get to it, the typical criminals can't get to it.
That's correct.
Because I remember reading about the FBI demanding and actually filing suit against Apple, or vice versa, Apple trying to stop the FBI from compelling them to open up an iPhone that one of the San Bernardino terrorists had left at the scene or at their home. And Apple was refusing to remove the encryption or provide the information with it unencrypted. And ultimately, the FBI went somewhere else because Apple refused, and they got it done.
From a corporate standpoint, I'm not 100% sure, but you wouldn't want to just open it one time for someone, because that leaves it open for you having to do that every single time something comes up with a phone involved. So I can see why they didn't want to do that, because then that just
protecting that technology.
That is correct.
But the bottom line is it doesn't protect. All right, we'll return to this topic. We'll be right back. I'm with Jason Hunt, an IT specialist. Thank you for being with us.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Document your claim. What do I mean? Whenever you present a claim, whether it's for injuries in an automobile collision or for a breach of contract case or a business claim, it all boils down to documentation and evidence. For example, when you go to trial, basically both sides are presenting their evidence of what they believe to be their case. For example, also, if you're involved in an automobile collision, document the event. Talk to all the parties who are involved. Get their names, address, contact information, insurance info. Talk to the witnesses on the scene. Also get their contact information. Take photographs. With the phones we all have these days, everybody can take a picture and that paints 1,000 words. So document your claim. The Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is document the claim.
This has been Legal Lines Tips.